So this morning, the passage that Cheryl just read for us comes towards the middle of the Lenten season, right? This is a text that is well known. You probably have heard so many sermons from this particular text during this time of the year, and probably can't even preach better than me. Because it has become part of who we are. Matthew, Mark, and Luke have this passage towards the end of their book, towards the end of Jesus' earthly ministry. You can go home and check it out in your own Bible. But John have it towards the beginning of Jesus' ministry, towards the beginning of his book. So we should know that the Gospels are not historical material, right? It is not somebody giving you historical event that took place, methodically. No, the Gospels are testimonies. Gospels are basically Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John telling us how they experienced Jesus, what they understood, and how they're applying it, and how they want us to also embrace it and find ways to disseminate them. Does it make sense? That's what Gospels are. And so I can also say that all four of them have different audiences that they are trying to reach out, right? And so John wanted to put forth right away about what Jesus is really planning to do. That grace surpasses everything, and God's Son, his sacrifice, somehow fulfills all the other sacrifices that people in the Old Testament practice. Does it make sense? If you read Hebrews, you will find in Hebrews that Jesus became the perfect sacrifice of God. He became the ultimate sacrifice for our salvation. You see? And so that is what John is trying to say. And so the trajectory for him from here on, it is going to be different. It is going to be different. So John is really trying to shift a paradigm for us and prepare us what is coming after. Okay? So I think those are little things that helps us broaden our understanding about the four evangelists who are trying to tell us their faith experiences. Does it make sense? Okay. Should I go to the next point? So, you remember Moses, don't you? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Moses. His mother weaved a little basket, put him there, and took him to the Nile River, where Pharaoh's daughter and her servants came to bathe. She was a smart woman. And we know why that happened, right? Yeah. God was bringing this little one, or almost like grooming this little one, to do something powerful that children of Israel have been praying for the last 400 years in Egypt. Crying out to God to liberate them from the iron grip hands of the pharaohs. Does it make sense? And so God brings this little one. I don't know whether he knew what was going on. But one day, this big shrubs was lit on fire. Right? Yeah. It was burning. It was burning pretty good. But it was not consumed. How about that? And then a voice comes from the bush, the shrubs, the fire. The ground you're standing is holy. Take your shoes off. Yeah. And then God shared his vision, mission with Moses. And now, with much trepidation, Moses is trying to put his mind around this wonderful plan that God had charted for him. Go and talk to Pharaoh. Oh, man. Yep. Go to him and tell him, let my people go. Even Moses thought that was a crazy idea. Right? He said, I can't talk. I stutter. I'm not the right person. You got the wrong guy. Go find somebody else. But when God has a mind on you, no matter what you do, someday, at some point, you'll stop. And you'll say, okay, I'm going to stop running away from God, right? That's what happens. So it was hard negotiating with Pharaoh about let my people go stuff. And so God had to send 10 different plagues, right? And the last plague was the Passover plague. That every Israeli household need to have their doors smeared with blood so that when the angel of God comes down to slaughter all the male child in Egypt, angel of God will pass. Right? That is how the word Passover comes. Right? So this Lenten season this is about Passover. Huh? Are you with me on this? I have to tell you a lot of stories to come to this point. See? Passover. And the children of Israel were saved. And which means they were liberated. So during this Passover, in the ancient Israel, they were required to come to Jerusalem to commemorate and celebrate this Passover. That God somehow intervened and rescued and delivered our people from the hands of Pharaoh. And so, children of Israel who were scattered by now in the ancient Israel, they were all coming home to Jerusalem to do their rituals of bringing sacrifice, so that they are remembering and recommitting that from here on, no nation will take this people into captivity and turn them into slavery, kind of. Right? So Passover was very important. It was a mandatory thing. They all came together in Jerusalem for a week. I'm sure there were some feasting, celebration, but there were also a lot of reflection, right? Maybe the word I'm looking for is maybe a time of solemnity. That's the kind of word that we don't use often, right? Just, in that very powerful posture of prayer unto God with thankfulness for the deliverance. Since the children of Israel were scattered all around ancient Israel, they could no longer bring their herd to Jerusalem to sacrifice. They couldn't bring their cow, they couldn't bring their lamb or goat or dog, because when you are herding animals, your 2 days journey will become 4 days, right? Yeah. Some of my people still do back home, because it is expensive to rent a truck to transport the animals. And so people are out there, whole family, they might have bought 5, 10, 20 cows. They're on the road walking from that end to this end. Children of Israel couldn't do that anymore. It has become too cumbersome. Right? And then when the animals are on the road for that period of time, they get sick. They might fall and break their legs. But God says, the children of Israel, bring to me unblemished unblemished animal, right? That was not possible. How can we bring unblemished animal to God for sacrifice when we have to walk this many days to come here? Animals are no longer unblemished. Does it make sense now? And so, Jerusalem temple leadership, the trustees up there, decided, we will facilitate this. And maybe just have some money changers out there, and maybe some animals out there, so that people don't have to drive around Menifee and Riverside County trying to find some good, unblemished animals. Right? Initially, it was great. Charity. It was a good mission of the Methodist men and women. They all thought this was a brilliant idea. But if you are not careful, brilliant ideas can go out of focus. Right? Yeah. And so it has become a humongous flea market. Their little rummage sale had turned into a flea market. It has become a money-making business. No longer a ministry, but business. People who had money were able to buy animals. So, when foreigners comes, we know who they are, right? If you have traveled around the world, people know if you are a tourist. If you want to buy a little gadget, it might be $3 for local people. But because you're a tourist in America, it's about $10. There were strict guidelines for those kinds of things. But eventually, prices were exaggerated enormously. And so, rich people could buy the animal they want and bring them to sacrifice. But poor people, they walked here. They don't have a whole lot. They couldn't afford to buy a cow or a sheep or a dove to sacrifice to God. Think about that. How dejected they might have felt. How they felt that they have been somehow ignored, that somehow they cannot come to God, that they cannot earn the favor of God, that somehow they cannot connect with God. Think about that. Jesus was mad not because this wonderful ministry had become a flea market. No, that's not the point. The point in this text is that poor people had no access to God. Jesus was angry because you have made difficult for these people to come to God. Why have you turned God's house, the house of prayer, into a den of thieves? That's a pretty difficult choice of words there. Why? Anywhere you go, you will find poor. Hard-working poor. All that I know is poor people don't want to be poor. They will say, what have we done in our lives that God has given us this, They are wrestling with it. Nobody wants to go to bed empty belly. Nobody wants to be looked down upon. But poor have always felt rejected, ignored, underestimated, right? Yeah. Not an easy place to be. And that is why Jesus was mad. That you have created barriers, impossible barriers for the least of these to come to God. And sometime we as church also be mindful about what we do, how we do. I think John Wesley was also trying to transform or revive the Anglican Church. White collar denomination, all the uppity-ups were all Anglicans. Who was doing anything for the poor? The coal miners. They are not reject of the society. They are hard-working people that is running the country. See? And John Wesley was at the coal mine before the coal miners arrived. He greeted all of them, prayed for them, and then they went down. In the evening when it was time for the coal miners to come out, John Wesley was waiting for them to come out. See? Caring for the poor justice issue, why is it so big in our United Methodist theology? It is because that is our DNA. That is how our movement got started. And so, whatever we do, let us be mindful about who we are and what we're able to do. Jesus said, poor will always be around. Maybe to keep us humble. I don't know. But something to think about. God help us. Every single day to be mindful about people we know who are in need and how we can help. Amen? Amen.